Hey guys, it's me. I just want to say hi and ask that you guys continue to pray for me and share some of the exciting news that I've gotten. Guess who gets to go home tonight? This girl. Yes, I'm gonna get to go home so I can spend Thanksgiving with my family. I'm really excited about that. Um, I did have some other awesome news on last night. It was just me and my night nurse, and she's like, "Let me go ahead and check the pulses in both of your feet." And I was like, "Okay." And I said, "Well, I didn't even tell her. I usually would tell the other nurses that they said the X that they had marked where they'd heard like a small pulse that you could go a little bit to the inside part of the foot, and then you would hear the pulses. It was very faint and kind of hard to find, but that's where they were finding the pulse, right? So I was tired of telling nurses that, and some were finding, some were not, and they were giving up and all this stuff. So, well, let me back it up just a little bit. Um, on Wednesday, after the original surgery, they actually, the pulses were strong, in the bypass. The next day, still strong. The next day, weak, until finally they were saying the bypass was completely down, that they weren't hearing anything. But for some reason, they still were hearing this tiny little pulse. It's something that these other people were saying those are the same collaterals you're hearing before we had the bypass. The bypass is down. Okay, fine. I can go with that, but wasn't really hearing anything at all because the other bypass had been down. But let's go on ahead. Fast forward back to last night. So I had been up on my feet and had them down over the edge and did some up and down exercises and things like that. Throughout the day. She took a little machine. It's called a Doppler. It's kind of like a small ultrasound machine, except it's not the picture. You only get the sound. And she put it down, moved it around, and I was like, wait, is that my pulses I'm hearing? I mean, loud as the very first day, like. I know what it sounds like. I have a Doppler at home. I've had ultrasounds and I've been going through this for 3 years, so I've got some experience on what the sound sounds like. I was so excited, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm hearing it, and you're hearing it too. We're both hearing it." So she was so excited, and she's like, "Well, wait, let me just hear the other foot. Make sure I'm hearing this." And she put the Doppler on the other foot, and we heard just as loud on the right foot, which has great pulses. And she said, "Well, let me try behind the knee." She's like, "Okay." It's like loud as can be. And she said, "Okay, just for good measure, make sure nothing's wrong with the Doppler. Let me check the pulses in your wrist. We know you're alive because you're here." And she checked the pulses in the wrist, and it sounded the same. And she said, "Let me see again. Let's go back, see if it's some kind of fluke." She went right back down to the foot again. Just as loud as before. I mean, we're not talking about like a slow, sluggish, it's not a collateral. It wasn't slow, it wasn't sluggish. Um, this was an actual pulse. I know the sound of a pulse as opposed to like a sluggish or like a collateral or something. And she was so excited, and she got a marker and she marked a dot on there really, really dark, and she even put it in her nurse's notes, and she was excited to share it with the other nurses. And when shift changed, she shared the good news with the next nurse. And later on, vascular came in that later that morning, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna take a look at your foot." And I'm all excited, and I tell her, I'm like, "Oh, the nurse and I were here last night." Because, well, I guess she came first. She's like, "Oh, so I heard you're gonna be um having your amputation Wednesday. I was like, no, I'm not having an amputation Wednesday. I'm like, I'm gonna be at home Wednesday. I don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, oh, well, maybe next Wednesday. I was like, nope, wrong information. I never said anything about having amputation next Wednesday. I said that I will call you guys when I'm ready to do anything. Don't call me, I'll call you, kind of thing. And she was like, oh. And I told her, I said, oh, because great news last night. The nurse and I were here, and was listening to the pulse, and I explained to her, everything that went on. And she was like, oh, let me check. That's probably not what it was. Debbie Downer. Boo. Boo. Okay. And I heard it plain as day, loud as heck. She moves the diaper off to the side to try to make it sound diminished. I'm like, what are you doing, girl? Like, it was just there. I'm like, and then she's like, is this what you're talking about? Oh, yeah, well, this is kind of sluggish. This is color. I'm like, no, that's not. That is nothing that I was hearing before the bypass. And so I went on to question her more about her knowledge base. Like, well, what makes my bypass down? Why is my bypass down? What makes